Hello, everyone. It's Lauren Kuby. I manage events and community engagement for the Global Institute of Sustainability and Innovation. And we are so excited to welcome the Fabric folks today, Sherri Berry and Angela Johnson. And right now, I want to introduce to you Stephanie Pierotti, who is serving as the interim executive director for the Arizona Apparel Foundation. She's going to lead us through a freewheeling discussion with Sherri and Angela and take a lot of audience Q&As. This should be a fun afternoon here. Hoping to get a lot of good questions to the audience. Please post them in the Q&A and we'll be feeding them to Stephanie, your moderator. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lauren. Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce today Sherri Berry and Angela Johnson. Sherri is not only an ASU graduate, but also the president of Arizona Fashion Source and co-founder of Arizona Apparel Foundation. And Angela Johnson is with us as well. She not only is an ASU instructor, but is the CEO of Label Hoard and of Angela Johnson Designs, and also the co-founder of Arizona Apparel Foundation. So today we'll talk a little bit about how Fabric has pivoted this year with the pandemic upon us, from being a fashion incubator to a manufacturer of PPE. So Sherri and Angela, I'll let you tell us a little bit about that.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm Angela.
And I'm Sherri. And Angela, you do the best job kicking it off, so I'm going to hand this to you right now.
Okay, so I'll tell you a little bit about what Fabric is. It stands for the Fashion and Business Resource Innovation Center, and we are a fashion incubator, and we're here right on the ASU campus. And our goal is really to help apparel entrepreneurs with everything that they need so that they can run a business here in Arizona. So we provide everything they need under one roof so they don't have to leave Arizona to find all the resources like no minimum manufacturing, business startup services, classes, event space, offices, co-working, maker space. I mean, you name it, we probably do it here. And we have been here for about 4 years. We've helped probably about 500 apparel entrepreneurs in those 4 years. And it's a really cool, unique model that we like to call a public social cooperative enterprise. Actually, Sherri coined that term.
Got it right.
What we mean by that is that it's basically a combination of for-profit, nonprofit, city, and community all working together to make this place happen and to provide all of this for these apparel entrepreneurs that want to be able to enter the industry, make niche products, make very unique, sustainable products, and not have to go offshore for their manufacturing, so that they can actually oversee it and make smaller quantities of it domestically. So it's a more sustainable model than if you were mass producing, overproducing offshore, where things can't be really regulated and you never know what's going on. So that's kind of the gist of what happens here.
Fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about the beginning of 2020, way back when, pre-pandemic. Can you kind of walk us through how you found out about what was going on with the pandemic and the needs assessment that occurred as things were transpiring, not only in Arizona, but across the world? Can you just tell us a little bit about how that went down at Fabric?
I'll take this one. Obviously, New York started the surge way before it hit Arizona. And so like everybody else watching the news reports of what was happening specifically in New York City, with them being early to have to shut down because of the hospitalization rates and, just what was happening, knowing that surge was gonna start moving west and what that would mean. And of course, our local government being very proactive and already talking about what Arizona might have to do to protect everybody, make it a safe environment, and make sure that our hospital systems didn't see, an oversurge. So we knew, I think, early February that there was going to be some major changes going on. And if you're a community resource and you're servicing hundreds of designers, and our business was accelerating. The fashion industry is moving more towards online. Everybody can see the store closures. And so this was already a business trend that we were supporting in an accelerated manner. And we were hiring people and gearing up because there was more brands looking to start and have our services. And there was a lot of really exciting projects out there. There's a company who had a really innovative mask project before this even hit that we were helping. And actually that project has moved to an ASU student group that's involved in a big contest right now, and we're crossing our fingers that they're going to do well with it. But we were just supporting so many projects, and it was accelerating, and we're looking at, if we shut down, what we do and what all of our designers do and the people we help as a community resource is non-essential, and we're going to be forced to shut down. And it's going to take 4 years of being a public social cooperative enterprise that has this unique resource to the nation that is really built on building an apparel industry here in Arizona and even spreading beyond our borders that is sustainable and reliable for tons of brands having to shut down. And you know, I remember we had a little meeting, and we were all talking about it, and we're like, what are we going to do? I mean, it's like we need to, you know, protect our foundation and our community and our designers, and what do we do? And we sat there and said, well, we have a really unique set of skills and resources here. We have a community, we have the support of a city, we have a nonprofit arm, and we have always wanted to help. So how could we help in this situation? And, you know, we started reaching out and asking that question, and we got invited into, and this was really early March, a task force that the state of Arizona, who I think was really proactive at looking at what we needed to do to respond. And it involved the ACA, the Arizona Department of Health Services, DEMA was on there, which is the Department of Emergency Management here in our state, and everybody, and they invited some big hospital systems, and we were invited on to that because we had manufacturing expertise, and we thought, well, there's a possibility that we can help. And there was a lot of discussion around the PPE shortage at that particular time. And what had happened at a federal level is basically the thought process was to push the PPE for the state, the needs back onto the states. So it kind of forced this every man for themselves kind of thing, which you saw happen in New York and other places, and nobody was prepared for it. So each individual state was looking for their own resources to be able to fill the PPE shortages that they thought were coming up, which put everybody in the boat of looking local, which is really great if you have the local resources and expertise to be able to do this. And so we had been asked a lot of questions about masks because early on that was the biggest shortage. And we had decided that we wanted our customer to be the healthcare provider. They were the people on the front lines. They were the people who really needed to be protected with PPE. And if we were going to use our manufacturing expertise, which is truly in design, development, and manufacturing products for specific needs, that we wanted to focus that to safe and effective needs for healthcare workers. And the N95 mask is not a cut and sew item. It is an engineered product, and the amount that goes into making an N95 mask that can filter out 98% of particles that are so small is just something that we knew we couldn't gear up to, and there's massive amounts of equipment that can be used to make these efficiently. So we're like, what can we do? And on the call, the hospital systems had already said that they predicted the next big shortage would be in gowns. And so we thought, well, this is something we can do. I mean, we are cut and sew, we do apparel. It seems like it fits into really our expertise. Let's look into it. And so we immediately looked into, and it became really obvious. It's just one of those things where you go down the path because all the hospital systems were asking for disposable gowns. That's what they were asking for. But first of all, we didn't want to make disposable gowns because we are a organization built on sustainability. That's why we started. We want a more sustainable industry. And it just happened that the material that the disposable gowns are made out of, which is called spun-bound polypropylene, and a material called SMS, which is 2 layers of spun-bound polypropylene with a material called meltdown in between. Those materials were scarcer than the finished goods were. So it really put us in a position where it was impossible to make disposable gowns. So we were in this realm where, okay, now what do we do? And we really thought, well, it doesn't make sense to be able to wear something once in a shortage. And is there a material that is medical grade that can meet the FDA standards? And I'll get into the FDA in a minute, or Angela can pick up with that, because that was a whole nother obstacle. But materials that can meet the standards for this that are reusable. And so we put together a task force. In fact, it's funny, it's still up on our wall here in Fabric. We had this whole war room, and we're like through all the problems and solving them. And one of the big ones was trying to source enough reusable material that we felt could be washed a bunch of times, because it is going to be expensive to sew a reusable gown. The material is going to be expensive. We just knew it was. And so if it could handle a bunch of washes, that would really make an innovative product for this particular time. So our sourcing team worked on this for weeks, and we ended up finding a fabric manufacturer in Greensboro, North Carolina. It's called PFG. They had made really high-tech fabrics for clean rooms. And it might not sound like it's as technical as medical, but believe it or not, a clean room gown is a much more technical garment than a medical gown is, even compared to the FDA standards. So this Precision Fabrics group, and they did have a medical team, and they have a whole lab on site, had done some medical fabric. It just wasn't the main part of their business. And so when we called, they were really excited about the opportunity to use the materials they already had for medical gowns, and even convert some looms over so that they could have more fabric available for us. And the beauty to us is all of that is made in Greensboro, North Carolina. So between the raw materials and then we started sourcing everything else and making all the gowns here in Arizona. And since we've added a couple of factories out of state, but 3 of the factories are still here in Arizona, these gowns are what are called Berry compliant, which means that 100% of the manufacturing is in the United States. And we thought that was important too, because part of the shortage was unreliable supply chains. It's like you didn't know who you were buying it from. There's these horror stories of people getting gowns that weren't certified. They were being seized. They were, defective. I mean, I remember seeing a picture of a nurse and she couldn't even get her arms through the sleeves because they were sewn up. And I mean, there was just huge issues with it. So we felt very strongly that manufactured in the United States made it reliable. The fact that it could be reused 100 times, which is what this material was rated for. And then there was this whole thing about making a safe and effective gown. And so that's when the whole FDA thing came into play, which was another part of our obstacle. And do you want me to turn it over to you, Angela, so you can talk about that, or is there another?
It's better to talk about the FDA, but I wanted to mention that it's very unusual to be able to find your materials domestically as well. So even though here at Fabric, we are helping to domestically make things, usually a lot of the brand owners that we're helping have to source their materials and trims from overseas, just because there simply aren't a lot of options of mills left in the United States. So for us to be able to locate a domestic mill that has the fabric that we needed was like unheard of. I couldn't believe that actually happened. So I just wanted to point that out, because it was such a great moment, when that actually happened. But the FDA part, I think you're probably better at describing the FDA part as well.
I'm going to go back to the timeline in the war room. It was early March. We kind of knew that we were going to have to shut down, and everybody we worked with and us were non-essential. So the beauty of making the gowns is not only did it help the community in an emergency response that was really needed because there were no sources besides trying to find local. I mean, just so everybody knows, Banner also used OSO to be able to source hand sanitizer because they used their distilleries to be able to make it. So, I mean, there were things like that going on. So local was about the only alternative to be able to source these really needed supplies. And so early March, we know there's a problem. We're involved in this task force. We're trying to find the materials and figure out how to make a gown. And we knew that we were not going to make anything unless it was absolutely safe and effective. You know, from an ethical point of view, our only option was to make sure it was safe and effective, which means we needed to have FDA approval. So we hired an FDA consultant. We were actually already working with another customer, Neolite, to make a cover for their innovative device, and had been working with Amy on that as their FDA consultant. So Amy, who is so qualified, volunteered to help us through this process, got us registered as an entity, and then walked us through all of the very complicated steps. Now, what the FDA did in mid to late March is they issued an emergency use authorization, and then they have very strict compliance standards depending on the type of medical device that you're making. And our level 3 gowns are what's considered a class 2 medical device. So normally you would need what they call a 510K approval. And submitting a 510K approval is a 6-month or more process once you submit it, and then all the stuff that you have to get going for that. So within about 2 to 3 weeks, we were a registered FDA entity. Working with Amy, we came up with a technical design that we knew would meet the compliance standards around the EUA for a level 3 gown. You still have to submit everything that meets those requirements to the FDA, and then they review it and they give you initial guidance on it. And so that's what you have to legally market these gowns. So it's not a full 510K, but it's basically sending to the FDA, our gowns meet all of your requirements, and you're going to review them and give us initial approval. So we got all that done by the second week of April. And on April 21st, we had the material in. In fact, there was a problem at the factory and we couldn't get the material. And Governor Ducey called in the Arizona National Guard. They flew to Greensboro, North Carolina, picked up all this material and flew it back so that we could start making these gowns, because at that particular point in time, they were the Banner and Dignity healthcare system, because they were depending on these, were, I wouldn't say about ready to run out of gowns, but it was a scary, critically low supply. So we needed to get these gowns started to get sewn and into these hospital systems. And so the National Guard flew in the material, and we started making gowns on April 21st. And the production accelerated because the need accelerated from there. And actually it continues to be, because there is still a shortage.
So tell us a little bit about how you guys handled, from an infrastructure standpoint, hiring new people, how many people were hired, and how the space was actually transformed into a manufacturing facility, and how the community helped make that happen.
I'd like to start, and then I'm going to let Sherri, if you want to talk more about the detailed numbers of employees and things. But I just want to set the scene, because you can only really understand the impact of it if you have an idea of what we used to do in this space. So Fabric, this building, used to be the Tempe Performing Arts Center, and it is kind of set up like a theater. And when we came in, we had utilized the theater space as an event space. So we would have runway shows here and all kinds of different events, trunk shows, business seminars. The city does a lot of things. ASU does things here. We have weddings here. I mean, it's a beautiful event space. And the event space had just a little bit of it kind of dedicated to no minimum manufacturing. So we had one row of sewing machines originally all along our wall, one wall. And those sewing machines were a little bit of everything. We had machines that could do lightweights, heavyweights, knits, woven. So we were able to manufacture everything. I mean, we've made wedding dresses, we've made medical devices, we've made yoga pants, we've made underwear and bras. You know, anything that you can probably think of has probably been made here. And so it's kind of a very unique way to manufacture. And so the space was really set up for small batch manufacturing and for events. And then the rest of the building has offices that we have designers, you know, where they have their own office studio spaces. We have photo studios, classrooms, there's all kinds of things going on in this building. It's actually 3.5 stories. And so each room is kind of dedicated to do a different thing before the pandemic. And then when this happened and we had to pivot and figure this all out, we had to really rethink the building. And we also had to kind of rethink what we were doing and how we were doing it, because we were set up to make small quantities of lots of different products. And to make large quantities of one product is a completely different thing. It's a completely different business. So we really had to figure out, what were we going to do? How are we going to do this? How are we going to solve this problem in this emergency situation, and completely change our businesses and our whole entire mission and our abilities in record time to meet these needs. And so it was a lot of brainstorming, a lot of coming together, a lot of effort by a lot of different people. We, you know, kind of combine forces with everyone around us. And our board of directors from our nonprofit was very involved. Our staff was very involved. Our community was very involved. The city, everybody kind of came together to help us figure out how to do this. And luckily, for years, we have made these amazing connections with so much of the community, and have had, you know, a lot of support from different entities, different foundations, different community members in what we're trying to do to support the industry and to support and reinvent and reshore the apparel industry. And so we turned to those resources, we turned to those supporters, and we said, you know, we want to solve this emergency crisis. We need help doing that. This isn't something that we're set up to do, but you know, everybody's asking us to do it. So we need to figure this out. We need help figuring this out. And so it took a lot to figure it out. But what that ended up being is support from lots of different foundations coming in and helping to raise the funds so that the equipment could be brought into Fabric, and we could actually transform the former event space into this PPE factory and add, you know, dozens and dozens of machines. And then those machines actually needed skilled people to run them, because being able to sew something is not that easy. I mean, it takes a lot of practice and a lot of skill, and there's a lot of different machines that, I mean, some of them are really complex. If you've ever seen them, you know, some of them have 5 spools of thread that go through 80 different holes before you can even press the gas pedal and make it go. And so it's a pretty complex thing, and you've got to be able to find the people who have that experience and that knowledge, and who have the right touch and the practice and everything to be able to run those machines and to service them when they break down and everything. So there was like this storm of things happening that we had to figure out how to solve while all this was going on. And so it did take I mean, record time, in my opinion, how we were able to figure this out. But after the foundation raised the funds, that equipment came, and then we had help from the Arizona Commerce Authority, the Manufacturing Extension Partnership. They actually came in and helped figure out a lean manufacturing model. And if you're unfamiliar with what that is, you know, when you manufacture something, it's very different than when you're making one of something, or you're making small quantities of something. So when you're set up the way we originally were, you know, we're just trying to figure out the garment originally when you make one, and then you try to think of the best way that you can repeat those steps in an assembly line. Well, in lean manufacturing, they kind of take it to the next level, to a whole different level of that, and making it efficient and fast, so that, you know, you can crank these things out much faster and get more of them made. And so with their help, we actually figured out what the best setup would be for this line. And so, you know, you have the first person on the line doing one part of the garment, like maybe sewing the shoulders, and then the second person on the line maybe sewing the side seams, and then the third person doing this or that. And so being able to figure that out was half the battle or part of the battle. And then being able to practice that and make sure that, that really was what we thought the right solution and the right setup. And then to be able to repeat that line multiple times so that we have multiple lines happening simultaneously was really what we had to do. And then being able to actually make that socially distant on top of it was a whole nother level. So imagine if normally you're squeezing people in together as close as possible to maximize the space and be able to hand off the garment. We now have to tackle that and do it in a safe and effective way that will prevent the person that they're sitting next to from catching COVID, So not only did we have to do everything that you would normally have to do to set this up and pivot, but we had this extra layer of safety to put on top of it. And what we came up with was this line where everybody's faces are actually 6 feet from each other. They're not even facing each other. They're all facing away from each other. And everybody had to go through all of the protocols of learning how to stay sanitary and, keep their workspace clean and how to and institute all the check-in protocols and things like that. So there was just a lot more than I think, what had to have done, in any other normal circumstances.
Right, right. So how many people did you actually have to bring in? How many jobs did you create with
we
this?
had like 20 employees originally or so, and now we are like 90 or so. Sherri could probably give us the
We had 25 employees and we're currently sitting at 98. And then we added 2 other Arizona factories, and between all 3 factories, it's 200 extra jobs. When a time when people needed them, and these jobs are way above minimum wage, and we've added a full benefit package, so everybody has life and dental and health and 401k and vision, and so we're just really proud that we were able to not only help out in the emergency, but also supply all these jobs. And the other thing that I want to say, two other really remarkable things happened out of this. One is there was a need everywhere, and obviously the big hospital systems treat the most patients, so they're first on the block. But there were a lot of other people who were competing. So the states are competing with each other. The hospital systems are competing with each other, and then all of the other smaller providers are competing with the big hospital systems, and nobody has enough. And so, the Navajo Nation and the Indian Medical Services and small rehab centers and dentist offices, and at the time they were closed, but there were other people who were providing essential medical services who really needed to have protection, and they couldn't get gowns. And so we had decided early on that we didn't want to create a social justice injustice issue where the big hospital systems we were supplying, and then all these other people who had equally almost more dire needs were getting ignored in the thing. So we set up one line in the factory that just serviced all of the small needs. And it allowed us to be able to send 5,000 gowns to the Navajo Nation and supply all these other people in need with smaller orders, so that it was an even distribution of it. In fact, being able to order just a couple of gowns, let's say you're a school nurse, or, we've had prison systems call and they need protection. It's just people who really need to be protected who can't get gowns. What we've done, and maybe Angela, you can share the screen, we've actually created a brand of these reusable gowns now, because we really think this is innovative. A reusable gown isn't something that hospital systems were using, but when you have a shortage, if you can reuse something 100 times versus throw it away, which I think one of the things that happened with COVID is so much more PPE was being used. It's ending up in the oceans and the landfills, and it doesn't deteriorate, and it's creating its own huge waste problem, that having sustainable reusable materials makes sense for that reason too. More is being used, so more is going into the landfill, there's a shortage, so the reusable part really makes sense. So we created a brand, and it's called Reusa, for Reusable USA. And this particular website, you can go on it and you can order one gown if you want. And it is an FDA registered AAMI level 2 or 3 gown. you can see these are some of our products. If you scroll down, Angela, hopefully the website will pull up.
Are you able to see it?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can see it.
So on this website, you can see view our products. You can order 1 gown, you can order 2 gowns, you can order 3 gowns, and we can ship them within 2 or 3 days out of the building right now. So really anybody who has a need for these gowns, which then are reusable, so they don't have to worry about trying to do the supply shortage, can have them. The other thing is with 100 washes, these gowns, one use is about 35 cents a gown, 36 cents a gown. Even with washing, it's below $1 a gown. And the price for a disposable gown right now, retail, depending on how many you buy, is anywhere between $3 and $7 a gown. So this makes sense from a financial perspective too. So it just ended up being this great solution, and now we're able to service almost anybody who needs the gowns. And in fact, the manufacturing has increased so much that we are going to end up moving it out of fabric. There's going to be another business created in Tempe, and hopefully that will continue to grow as more hospital systems hopefully see the light and convert to reusable as a modern day solution to solve this product. And I don't think it's just in gowns. I think it's in masks and a lot of other products as well.
So we have a question from the audience from North Carolina asking if there's a template or a toolkit that other organizations can follow to set up models similar to this in their states.
Well, you know what? We were thinking about that from the beginning. One of the things that we tried to do to make sure that other people could help mitigate this crisis shortage was to be able to provide our pattern to the community. And so we created a project that we called the 1 Million Gown Challenge. And we basically provided the pattern itself on our website that anybody could download, and had all the instructions on how to sew the pattern together. And our challenge was to anybody who wanted to help do this and to fill this shortage, take it, use it, make it. And we knew in the beginning that the material was the hardest thing for people to get a hold of. And so that challenge actually has instructions to be able to get a material that's a little different. It's actually something that you can get at like Home Depot and Lowe's and places like that, so that if you were somebody in your own home, you could actually make one of these gowns and find that material to be able to maybe make some for like a dentist or something down the street, like Sherri was saying, somebody who maybe wasn't able to find any gowns anywhere. So we had a lot of community members download that project and actually make those gowns as well. Sherri, you're gonna
I want to add to that, if you're interested in starting up a home manufacturing operation around this, and I mean, we're all for USA manufacturing. In fact, if we can supply our own PPE going forward as a country, then we won't be in this crisis again. One of the things that happened is we were so quick to do this and do this right that I had gone to a conference in October, and it was run by Gerber Technology, and they were on top of an innovative all-in-one manufacturing solution, and it was kind of part of the Fabric Incubator. And so I had met a lot of people at Gerber, and they started calling me in April, in May, or us, and asking us what we were doing. And it ended up that we were invited into calls with big companies like Ralph Lauren and other manufacturers that were trying to convert to PPE, and they were looking to us for expertise. And what Gerber did is they created a whole online resource to help manufacturers go through this process that we contributed a lot to, including patterns and know-how and our FDA consultant. So if you are interested in starting this up, Gerber has built up a great deal of resources for manufacturers looking to get into this business and do it right, because the do it right is what we consider the most important thing going on here. But it was a compliment to us, but now there's this great resource out there too.
And if you're
can people contact you? Sorry, people can contact you through the website, through the Reuse the website, if they have any specific questions for you.
Yeah, and it's reusable.ppe.com.
Great. And then we can also make the connection to Gerber as well. And I just wanted to clarify what Gerber is, because I don't think a lot of people know that if they're not in the industry. So it's actually the CAD system, the computer-aided design program that most companies use to make their patterns and to digitally make their patterns and to grow them into sizes and manipulate them and everything that they need for manufacturing. And so we use Gerber here, and that's like a universal program. So that's what she's talking about. But the really cool thing is that Gerber has some pretty awesome, innovative technology that we are just upgrading to right now and learning, that is actually a sustainability topic as well, because the technology that they have is going to enable, it does enable a pattern to be kind of digitally sewn up on an avatar on your computer, so you can kind of see what your garment's going to look like before you actually ever put scissors to cloth. And when you cut and sew something, that's where a lot of your expenses are as a brand owner. And so this kind of saves you from having to actually pay for, so many samples for testing and for fittings and revisions and things like that, because you can digitally see what it looks like. So we're really excited to work so closely with Gerber because of that. That's the kind of technology that, we're all about here at Fabric, to make it so that this process for apparel entrepreneurs is more efficient and therefore more sustainable.
It's really an end-to-end solution. And one of the other partners that is one of our manufacturers is called Onpoint Manufacturing. And that factory is the highest tech apparel manufacturing in the world, and it sits in Florence, Alabama. And that factory has the ability where if you're a designer today and somebody orders something on your site online, one can be made, one can be shipped. So that takes all the waste out of the apparel system where, the apparel manufacturers or brands were overbuying to fill the stores, not knowing what would sell. Well, now something isn't made until it's actually sold. So it's a completely sustainable solution. And so through all of this, these partnerships ended up evolving, and it really gives our incubator the ability going forward to have this end-to-end technology solution, because my friends at Gerber and me helping them helped us with this software. We have this end-to-end technology solution and the ability to be able to utilize this high-tech factory, and we're really hoping that one of them might be built here in Arizona to help us continue to grow our industry here in Arizona that can be a truly efficient, sustainable resource for apparel manufacturing, and really provide an equal playing field to the young designers that couldn't compete with the brands manufacturing overseas. So, I mean, all of this has amazing outcomes for our designers going forward. And the other interesting thing is, coming out of COVID, I don't think we've ever had more demand on the incubator for new brands starting apparel lines, because more is going online now, more stores are closing, and the need for our services and being able to have sustainable, efficient ways to be able to manufacture clothing is even higher in demand.
And I think that's fantastic for young designers, like you said, taking the risk out of developing a lot of inventory that they haven't secured orders for, or taking the risk out of doing size runs where you're just not sure what sizes are going to sell. So to be able to do that production on demand is pretty amazing. I'm going to take a question from the audience here. So this is regarding the City of Tempe's Trap Neuter Release program. About how it's the covers for traps for cats are needed to calm cats before and after surgery. Are you familiar with that program?
Yeah, actually I did them today.
So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so they reached out, and basically, obviously, we're right here, and so it makes the most sense to have those cage covers be made locally. And so we are donating the fabric scraps from the leftover fabric from the PPE that we're making to make these covers, and donating the actual making of the covers, the sewing of the covers. And so there'll be another sustainable story, because we're not going to throw away the scraps from the PPE factory. Those are going to go to make these cat cages covers. And we do things like that here all the time, and there's a lot of recycling and upcycling of the scraps that are left over here. In fact, we have a program here called Refabricate, where normally when a brand owner comes through here and we have leftover scraps, we try not to throw those out, and we give them to a group of designers who take the scraps and patchwork them together and create new garments out of them. And then we actually created an event called Arizona Eco Fashion Week a few years ago to celebrate that program and to celebrate all the other sustainable designers in town that, you know, maybe nobody even knows that they're sustainable. If they use zero waste patterns, or they upcycle, or they use sustainable fabrics, we put them on the runway. We don't charge them to be in the event. They get exposure for what they're doing, and we're celebrating sustainability. And then the Refabricate program, we sell the garments right off the runway, and the designer gets to keep 50% and the nonprofit gets to keep 50%, and it's a win-win for everybody. So there's some pretty cool things that happen here in sustainability.
Fantastic. So can you tell me a little, go ahead, Sherri, sorry.
I was just going to say, adding on to that, just so everybody knows, we don't throw away any of our cutoff scraps. That's just a decision that we made from a sustainability standpoint from day one. So there are some big cutoff areas around the gowns, because the gown is one piece so that it's protective, so you avoid putting seams in it. And what we use, or what we decided to do, is the areas around the gown, we cut out pieces. They're in a couple pieces, but we're making reusable bonnets and scrub caps for the hospital systems out of the spaces where the patterns are, so that there is less waste there too. And then if we do have scraps, we're trying to find projects just like the feral cat one to be able to use more of those scraps, because we are generating a lot. The other thing that I wanted to say is, as of yesterday, we hit the 250,000 gown manufactured marks since April. And what I want everybody to visualize is, what do you think 25 million gowns that really are contaminated and they're made out of plastics look like in a landfill? And that's been saved.
Yeah, because 250,000 times 100 washes, I mean,
it's 25 million gowns.
And we have a question from the audience. Do you have any data on how many times the gowns are actually reused? And I believe that there's a level that they go down from protectivity once they are washed a certain amount of times. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So these gowns are rated for 100 washes, and that testing is really stringent because it has to meet the FDA requirements. And it's not only the materials, it's the gowns themselves. Right now, the gowns that we've put into circulation since mid-April, they're just hitting the 50 wash mark. We've brought a lot of them in to look at them and make sure that they are performing as needed. The things that we found were minor, but we are, I mean, you don't know what you don't know. When a gown in a hospital setting going through commercial washes hits 50, you don't really know what's going to happen to it. So we've been bringing them in at 25, 50, we'll bring them in at 75, but we did send a bunch of gowns through 100 washes and then test them, but we are also looking what's happening in the field, and they're doing really well. When they hit 100 washes, if they're still serviceable or if they can have minor repairs, we would do that, and then they can be brought back out into the field as a level 1 protection gown. So they might, I mean, they probably have a life way past 100 uses.
Right, right. So another question from the audience, do you have volunteers at Fabric?
oh yeah.
How many volunteers do you have right now?
We actually have registered over 700 volunteers in our system. And so over those years, volunteers have helped us with things like teaching a class or helping backstage at an event or running the front desk or anything. I mean, there's a job for everyone. And so one of the things that we do to try to make sure that we're selecting people who maybe really need it more than others are internships through ASU. And so you know, people in the fashion program, the sustainability program, the business programs, and all the different programs can come here and kind of select what they really care about most and focus on that. So, you know, we have different interns that handle different things, everything from business and marketing and branding to, you know, actual logistics in the building, to manufacturing and design, to, you know, events, I mean, you name it.
Fantastic. And other than volunteering and interning, how else can the community at large or individual companies help you to achieve your goals through this pandemic?
Support our foundation. It's thefabricfoundation.com. We just renamed it from Arizona Apparel Foundation, but the foundation is there to help designers, to help us in our mission to sustainably grow Arizona's fashion industry. And if you go onto the website, it talks about getting involved in all the ways that you can do that, whether it's volunteering your time, we offer internships, financial donations, just spreading the word. I mean, we do tours every week so you can learn more about us, and we're always looking for ideas to help partner with the community. This whole project on PPE was a giant state community effort. It involved, the city of Tempe, who supports us in a lot of ways, but the state and the philanthropy community and private business and our design community, and our manufacturing, I could go on and on. This really took a village. So we always need help, and the more people who get involved and, really want to see an innovative, sustainable industry grow into the future here, please log on to the foundation's website and take a look where we can really use your help.
Fantastic. Yeah, so on Angela's screen, we can see the azapparelfoundation.org and all of the donor partners that have helped bring these programs to life. So thank you to all of them.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew the website is azapparelfoundation.org. Like Sherri said, the website will be changing soon to the Fabric Foundation, but for now, this is where you can find it and you can navigate everything up here. So different programs and how you can get involved is right here. So when you click on Get Involved, there's actually a sign up for being a volunteer. So you can actually see it right here, volunteer your time, and you can follow the steps right here to register in our system as a volunteer and go from there.
Fantastic, and thank you to Lauren for posting the YouTube link where this can be seen in the future if you have a need to go back and reference any of this information.
I just want to add one more thing too.
Sure.
If you are a designer and you're interested in starting up a new brand sustainably, we have a ton of resources in our incubator and this is the website, fabrictempe.com. There's a button on the website that says New Get Started. It has all kinds of information to help you out.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys so much. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to contact Sherri and Angela through the Reusa website or through their social channels. And we appreciate everyone's time.
Thanks for letting us share our story.
Thank you.
Thank you, panel. Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren.